thought I'd sit down and have a talk of sorts about a subject that I think tends to be kind of sensitive. Well, it is sensitive and hard to talk about with some people. And that is weight loss. And I thought about just kind of sitting down and having a chat or a talk of sorts, talking about my weight loss journey since last year. And before I do, I want to explain that if you stumbled upon this video for weight loss reasons and you're wondering why I'm talking the way I am, it's because I am an ASMR YouTube channel. And I tend to try to, I make relaxation videos for ASMR purposes. So, that's why. So, I guess I could talk about the story of my weight issues. First of all, I started my weight loss journey, I think it was June or July of 2018, so last year. And I was 206 pounds when I weighed myself at that time. And I remember the start of it, it was the beginning of either June or July, so. And presently, since my last weigh-in, I now weigh 165 pounds. So I feel like a 40-pound loss, 41 technically, I feel like that's a big achievement. I feel really proud of myself, and I'm trying to look at every little positives of it. My goal is to hit 150 pounds at the very most. That is my target weight, and I'll go into why I'm aiming for that type of weight goal, and I'll tell a bit of my backstory of how I got heavy in the first place, of being like a 200-pound person. How I got heavy, what led me to getting heavy. I'll try to explain a lot of things as best I can, although some details I might omit for privacy reasons of other individuals that I may talk about. I may change their names and whatnot. So, I think it's just kind of funny. So when I was a kid, in the 80s, I was very skinny. I had a very high metabolism, from what doctors told my mom. So I was always very skinny, and there was even a time when my mom tried to get me into child modeling. Things didn't really work out though, because I had a speech impediment at the time. And, I couldn't really talk very well, and I was very quiet, so, that just never really happened, and I'm kind of glad it never did, because who knows where my life would be now, just with that kind of thing. But I was skinny for the longest time. Something very traumatic had happened to me when I was 10 years old. And so that did change. I want to say it did change me a bit. It changed from me being an outgoing child to being very reclusive. And I would hide in my bedroom so much. And this was before we really had home computers and internet access. So it was like, it was a big change. I did go through a lot of mental health issues. I developed depression, severe depression, and along the road in life I did develop severe anxiety. I still suffer from anxiety. Excuse me. I do still suffer from severe anxiety. It's just kind of daily now. I'm managing the best I can. But I was in the hospital quite a number of times. And I ended up going to a very strict school when I was 12. And my depression got so bad that I almost became anorexic. At 12 years old, I think I weighed, I don't even know what the normal weight was, but I think it was pretty dangerous though. And it wasn't like I was trying to lose weight or anything. I was happy with the way I looked. It was nothing like that. But it was more because, I guess, of how I was feeling. And also, I have been a very picky eater. So I was very reluctant to eat a lot of things that were, healthy. And I wasn't really, around my mom and dad, so this was a boarding type of school. I won't go too much into it, though. That's all a very long story. But, I was just thinking about how funny it is that there was a time where I was almost anorexic, and then later on, when you're growing up, I just got heavy. I think I maintained a very skinny weight, or I should say what people would consider skinny. I carried a skinny frame up until my latter high school years, when I was a junior, senior maybe, possibly sophomore. I remember my freshman year, I was pretty skinny, but then something happened between my sophomore year and my senior year where I was steadily gaining weight. I think in my junior year I weighed 185 pounds, and I just didn't really think much of it. The only person I can remember from that time that was pressuring me to lose weight was a gym teacher, and that actually was in freshman year of high school. I felt skinny in freshman year of high school, but I just kind of remember this gym teacher took this device. I don't remember what they're called, but they kind of measure how thick your skin is and what your fat ratio is in your skin. They kind of pinch your skin with this device just to see how much fat you had. And I think out of a lot of the girls there, I think mine was pretty bad. I was nowhere near 200 pounds or anything. I wasn't even 185 pounds yet, but according to the gym teacher, it was bad. I just didn't care. I didn't really think much of it. I was happy with the way I looked. So I eventually graduated high school, and I made some bad life decisions, one of them involving, the main thing involving getting into a relationship, a very unhealthy romantic relationship. I ended up getting married at 20 years old. And I remember very shortly afterwards realizing that I was very unhappy with the marriage. I was very unhappy of who I was with. So, I started gaining weight, and I think I just started to emotionally eat in a sense. I started just not really caring what I ate. The weight just packed on, and before I knew it, I was like 200 pounds. Maybe 190 something, but and this kind of weight gain lasted for several years, all throughout my 20s. And when I was almost 30 years old, my late 20s, I knew I wanted a divorce. So my then husband and I went into a separation period. And for the state we were living in, we had to be separated for at least a year in order to proceed with the divorce. So I moved in with my parents, and that's kind of a different story altogether. Honestly, most of it is a blur now, but I did struggle and I had a hard time with everything. I had a hard time just thinking of how alone I was going to be, but I knew I was unhappy, so I knew this was something that had to be done, and yeah. So when I was 29, I had a bit of a breakdown. I did have a breakdown, a mental breakdown. I had to be hospitalized. And this was at one point where I felt like I could not return to my parents. I could not live with them. So when I was hospitalized, which lasted for a month, only because they didn't know where I could go without being homeless, because I felt like I had nowhere else to go, they decided to put me in a group home. And I thought at the time it would be a good idea. It wasn't, though. But I digress. So I went to this group home, and it was essentially just a normal 2-story house in a really nice looking neighborhood. It was run by a woman and her family. I will name her... What name should I give her? I'll give her the name of Sarah. So Sarah had a really big family. She had, her husband. She had, I think it was 2 children, maybe 3 children. And they were all adult children. And then one of her kids had a grandson. This was a big family house. At the same time, Sarah was also housing 5 other female clients, which were essentially residents of the group home part of the house. So how this group home worked was, I was living in their house, in a room in their house. I had to share a room with one other woman. And it was kind of a small room. I had very little freedoms. There were specific rules to being a resident there in the group home part of it. I don't know how you word it. I was not allowed to answer the front door. I was not allowed to step outside of the house. I was not allowed to have my car there. I was not allowed to eat after a certain time. There was a curfew. I felt like I was a prisoner, though they did let me have my laptop at the time, and they did let me go back on the back porch and use it there, which was as close to being outside as I could get. I lived in this living environment for, I think it was like 10 months. And they did provide meals, of course. They provided mostly microwaved meals, this family. Though sometimes they did make a homemade meal. They also got me to drink flavored water. So it was like Hawaiian punch flavor packs that you would put in water to flavor it. And that was what I was given. And sometimes I would have milk or something, but yeah, it was mostly flavored water. So I stayed in this group home for about 9 to 10 months, from what I remember. I had turned 30 years old. I spent my 30th birthday there. I went in there so heavy, and when I came out, the day I was leaving actually, Sarah informed me that I had lost weight, and I couldn't really believe it at first, because I didn't really pay attention to myself. Like, I didn't like looking in the mirror. I thought I was so ugly. But I weighed myself, and I had weighed 150 pounds. So I lost, like, I think I had ended up losing about 60 pounds altogether. Because I think I had went in there initially at like 210 pounds, something like that. I just could not believe it. And it was like waking up and realizing that, like, you're a different person. Not like personality-wise, but that it was like waking up and realizing you had a different body than you thought. And if I can find a picture, I'll show the picture of what I looked like very shortly after I had gotten out of that group home. And how I got out of the group home was I ended up having to go onto Craigslist, finding a room for rent, and just because I just wanted so badly to get out. I wanted my freedoms back. So I ended up finding a room for rent, and I stayed with this other person for 10 months. And that was also another sort of bad living situation altogether for different reasons. After that, I ended up moving into my own apartment. I finally got my own apartment. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. I was barely able to pay rent, and I had to have help with utilities and whatnot, but it was a start for me. So, and I know this is a long story. Eventually, I did decide to try to date again, even though I was separated. So I went on to okcupid.com. I made a profile. I met this guy on there. He seemed like a really nice guy. I'll call him Mr. Wolf. He seemed like a really nice guy. He spoiled me. He was very generous with me. He treated me like a princess. But I was still very naive. And I didn't really realize that I was essentially... He was essentially only dating me because he wanted intimacy from me. And it wasn't so much about the relationship, it was more so just about having a booty call, so to speak. And this next part is kind of hard to talk about. Towards the end of our relationship, which was only 3 months, towards the end of that relationship, I still don't know whether this is the correct term with what happened, and I'm not going to go deep into it. But he did something very bad to me. And it's kind of hard to say it out loud because I don't know if I can justify calling it what it is. But I believe I was date raped. And I'm not going to go into the gist of what happened. I'm still trying to come to terms with, even if I could call it that. But it did affect me very badly, and all I remember was that I was sobbing. I was crying, and it still didn't stop, and I don't want to get into the details of what happened. So very shortly after that happened, he broke up with me, and I struggled very hard after that for various reasons. So I ended up gaining weight again. And before I knew it, I was back at being my normal 200-pound weight. And it remained like that for quite a few years, in my early 30s. I finally got my divorce in 2014. And I had my apartment for a while. But eventually, the apartment management decided to increase their rental rate one year by $100 for me. They wanted to increase my rent all of a sudden by $100 when it was time for me to renew my lease. And I could not afford that on the income I was earning. So I found myself having yet another breakdown. And that's just kind of going on to a different subject altogether. But I ended up moving up here to a different state in the US. And it's where I've been ever since. But this is a subject about my weight loss. So I will go into what methods I've been using to lose weight, how I've been trying to manage my weight and keep it more or less manageable and, low. So the reason I decided to start losing weight was because I was thinking about my past in that group home from all those years ago. And I thought about what essentially helped me to lose weight while I was there. And I discovered that it was essentially because I had to not eat after a certain time of the day. You had to eat dinner there. I think it was like at 7 o'clock. And then you weren't allowed to eat anything at all after 8 o'clock, and they just sent you to bed. So I thought about, well, what if I applied the same discipline to myself? If I combine calorie counting with cutting off consuming any calories whatsoever after 8 o'clock at night. What if I just did those things? How well would that work out? So I started that last summer. There's been no exercise routine. No, I have not been going to the gym or anything. The only sort of exercise I've been doing nowadays is just doing my pottery work, walking around, sometimes going on walks, but it's not been a very integral part of my weight loss journey. But I imagine that if you did put in some sort of exercise regimen, I imagine the results would happen much faster. So the method of, it took me about 2 to 3 weeks to really develop this healthy habit, but I just started being mindful of the servings of foods I was eating. And I got a doctor's recommended advice on consuming 1,400 to 1,500 calories a day. And that is what I believe most doctors would say. That's about the healthy range for an adult. I don't know much about teenagers. It might be different for teenagers, but you'll have to look it up yourself if you are younger, just to keep that in mind. So yes, it took me 2 to 3 weeks to get used to stopping eating or consuming any calories, even in liquid form, after 8 o'clock. All I would have after 8 o'clock is just regular water. Like so. There are other reasons why I decided to drink water. And those are more for health reasons, but I can touch on that topic another time in a different video. So, kind of boiling things down, since June and July I was counting calories, I was cutting off eating, consuming calories after 8 o'clock at night. I was drinking mostly water. I have been drinking mostly water. And at first, the weight loss was very prominent. It happened really fast at first. Having started at 206 pounds, I ended up dropping down to 190 pounds, I think about a month or two later. Or maybe a month and a half later, after I started. I do have a chart that I can show you if I can find it. It was on my old phone, but it has since died, so if I could find it, I'll show it to you. When I had hit 190 pounds, I started charting my weight, and I started trying to use a weight loss app to log how many calories I was eating. And what I came to learn over the months of this very gradual weight loss method is you don't want to agonize over every single calorie. You want to eyeball it. And you also don't want to deprive yourself. You deserve one cheat day a week to eat whatever you want, perhaps within moderation, but if you've been craving something, just hold like one day a week to enjoy that kind of craving. Because if you don't have like a cheat day of sorts, there's just a big chance you're gonna want to give up, lose the motivation to keep going, and you'll just say, F it. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think that's happened to us so many times, different ways. I'm sure it happens to many people. This method does require a lot of patience because the weight loss is very gradual. It's not going to happen overnight, I should say. You just want to keep at it. Chart yourself. Do not weigh yourself every day. Weigh yourself once a week, and if possible, I highly recommend you get weighed at a doctor or a medical place if possible, since their scales tend to be more accurate. I decided I would only weigh myself if I'm going to a doctor's appointment, which for me happens on average once a week, but that's like a different subject, I should say. Because if you weigh yourself every day, you're going to notice your weight is fluctuating. Your weight might go up. It might go down. You might have water weight. But all in all, it's a chance to sabotage yourself. And you don't want to do that, in my opinion. So take it from me. do not weigh yourself every day. Do like once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. And for a while on average, I think I was losing a pound a week. But then I did hit a plateau about a few months ago, back in, what was it, September, October of last year, 2018. I did hit a plateau, and you're going to eventually hit a plateau yourself where the weight loss is going to get slower. Because I guess, frankly speaking, your body's getting used to your new eating habits. So don't get discouraged when that happens, okay? You can do this if you want to pursue this. It's just going to take a lot of time and a lot of patience. But I challenge you to do this for a year, okay? Download some sort of weight loss app, something where you can log in your calories and whatnot. Challenge yourself to try to make these habits. Compare your weight in a year from now when you start. See how much you've lost. I promise you it'll be worth it if you keep at it. What else did I want to say? I think another thing that tends to help, something that I've experienced, and only because I had to take these shots, was I do have to take B12 shots every now and then because my B12 tends to be low. And I did hear, and I could be wrong, but I do hear that also can help with your weight loss progress. But don't quote on me on that. I just wanted to mention it because it could be something you can try if you're in the same boat as I am and you've got like low B12, you know. And of course, it's probably a given that you should try to eat try to mix like different stuff you're eating. Of course, like eat vegetables, you know, have like, I think one of the meals I like to go to for like dinner time is like a bowl of steamed broccoli, and not adding butter. I never add butter personally. I just flavor the broccoli with some sort of seasoning, like a sprinkle of like Montreal steak seasoning. And I know that might not be healthy either, but I'd rather have that than steak. I'd rather have that than butter, I should say. And I would heat up a few pieces of chicken, like grilled chicken, to mix in with the broccoli so there's a bit of protein. That's one of the meals I have when I can. I also tend to buy a bag of apples, and I'll eat like, I love Fuji apples. They're my favorite. But they tend to be kind of expensive depending on where you are. I tend to buy a bag of apples once a week, and I'll have maybe 1 apple a day. It's kind of like that saying, you know, 1 apple a day keeps the doctor away. So I try to, when I can afford to have apples, I'll have apples. I'll buy apples. That's something you could eat for breakfast and maybe like a bowl of cereal or something. I don't know, I'm weird. Sometimes I'll have like an apple with like a stick of cheddar cheese. You know those like string cheeses you can buy? I buy like a cheddar form of that. Or sometimes I might have cereal, but I'll try to go for like Cheerios, something like that. Something not too sugary. I'm not sure what else to add. I feel like I've rambled for so long. But yeah, through all these efforts since like June and July, I dropped down to 165 pounds. And it's still surreal to me. I'll put maybe video footage or like a photo of me of when I was 206, and maybe you can see the difference for yourself. You can especially see at the start of my YouTubing my YouTubing, I don't know whether to call it a career yet, obviously, but at the start of the YouTubing in general, when I started this channel, I was 200 something pounds. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I wanted to pursue weight loss is because I do believe there is still prejudice for overweight people on YouTube. I guess it depends on what kind of YouTube channel you have, obviously, but especially in the ASMR community, I do notice there tends to be a bit of prejudice, especially against heavier females. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's just what I've experienced. Other reasons I wanted to pursue this weight loss goal is because I just got so... I saw a video footage of something a friend had recorded of me one time last year. I was playing a board game with him. It was a card game, actually, but it was called Hex. And when I saw this video, I realized how big I was. And it's weird because, maybe a year before that video was shot, I was able to find confidence in myself. I was able to kind of embrace who I was and find beauty within myself at my weight of being 200 pounds. I just embraced it. I gained confidence, and it was very hard, but I did it, and I was happy for a long time, and I was so confident. I still like to think I am confident in what I do and how I am today. I still feel like I have a ways to go still before getting to a very reasonable and happy weight, at the most being 150, but maybe possibly lower in time. And I might do another video on that eventually, but for now, I think that kind of wraps up this subject, so I really hope this has helped you. And I appreciate you listening to me. And I hope that if you do decide to pursue your own weight loss journey, you will use healthy methods, you're careful, you take care of yourself, and you find something that works for you that's healthy. I cannot stress that enough. And I do wish you a very good night, if it is nighttime where you are. And I hope you have sweet dreams.